What is up, Rogue family? My name is Crim and welcome to what is probably the last video before the release of Shadowlands, which is due in just a few days now. Today we'll be looking at a variety of leveling tips and tricks to help you along on your journey to level 60. And don't worry, there won't be any lore spoilers in this video. Before we start, I just want to do a quick update on my last video in which I talked about covenants, etc. and I mentioned the Pelagos soulbind being slightly overtuned and that I expected a nerf. The very next day, Pelagos was indeed nerfed, which means all the covenants are now even closer together than before and you can really pick whatever you like. So with that out of the way, let's get straight into the leveling tips and tricks to get to level 60 in Shadowlands. Let's start by talking about the general leveling experience. And for leveling your main character from 50 to 60, you will be progressing through the main storyline of Shadowlands, going through each zone in turn in a linear fashion, which means it's going to be the same for everyone and for every character you level up. However, if you level up a second character, you will also be given the choice to just join a covenant straight away instead and level up by means of world quests, bonus objectives and dungeons instead. Now while you are leveling up your main character, you won't have to worry about getting to level 60 as soon as possible to try and get stuff done before the weekly reset. Blizzard has disabled a lot of important stuff before this first reset, so don't worry if you don't get to 60 on the first day. The current speed record for getting to level 60 has been set by Des Mephisto, who is a speedrunner by trade honestly, and it took him around 6 hours. For mere mortals like you and me, it will probably take around 10 hours if you go at a steady pace. So let's take a look at some of the things you can use to increase your leveling speed. Because the Shadowlands leveling experience is linear, it means that you're going to be sharing a lot of the zones and quest mobs with a whole bunch of people. So trying to get ahead of this curve can be very beneficial indeed when it comes to speeding up your leveling. One of the first things you can do is use any leftovers you have from BFA like flasks, foods, pots and augment runes to give you a bit of a buff and get you through the quest mobs quicker. Keep in mind that you can also use the Draft of 10 Lance potion, which increases your XP. However, this only works until you reach level 51. And the same goes for a lot of the potions, for example the Lightfoot potion, which increases your movement speed drastically whenever you use it, but it has got a 5-minute cooldown like all potions now do. And it is only effective until you hit level 51. When it comes to food, you can use your BFA leftovers, but there's also a Legion food called Bear Tartare. When you have the well-fed buff from this and you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, you will gain a short burst of movement speed. And speaking of Legion stuff that gives you movement speed, there's also the Hunger of the Pack trinket, which drops from the Halls of Valor dungeon, which also gives you a movement speed burst whenever you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor. The next thing you can do is use mount equipment. Most people have defaulted to using the water walking mount equipment because it is so useful in BFA. However, in Shadowlands there's not a whole bunch of water that you're going to be walking across. So what you can do instead is use the Lightstep hoof plates, which also increases your mount speed even further and is created by enchanting. And lastly, you can use the Goblin glider kits and the gun shoes to help speed up your leveling experience. Another bonus to your leveling speed is of course enabling War Mode, which increases the experience you gain by a decent amount. However, because of the linear nature of Shadowlands leveling and the crowded zones, this may do more harm than good, even though we are rogues and we can stealth our way through a lot of the trouble. It is something that you may want to feel out depending on your server and faction. The last thing you can really optimize is your specialization, and as rogues I would recommend leveling up as either outlaw or subtlety. Assassination currently just does not have the great damage that outlaw and subtlety can bring, and its damage profile is kind of slow as well. If you do decide to level as outlaw, I would recommend running the following talent setup. Note that you'll be using Marked for Death because you can get an enormous amount of resets, which is very useful, especially because spending combo points reduces the cooldown of your sprint and grappling hook. Also note on the second row, you may not necessarily want to use acrobatic strikes because the extra melee range is not as useful when mobs are hitting you in the face. Instead, you can go for the extra movement speed from hit and run, or get the reduced cooldown on grappling hook if you so desire. The other spec that I mentioned, subtlety, is the one I would probably favor when it comes to these two. It does a lot of front-loaded damage, especially when, once again, combined with marked for death. On the fourth row, there's also the Soothing Darkness talent, which is incredibly useful. It increases your health regen drastically when you are in stealth, and you'll be spending a lot of time in stealth while running between quest mobs, etc. And those are all the leveling tips and tricks I have to share with you guys today. If you have any of your own, feel free to leave them down below in the comments section. As always, don't forget to subscribe if you aren't already. I massively appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me recently. And leave a like on the video, it helps me out a lot. You can also follow me on my stream twitch.tv/CrimWow, and I can also be found on Twitter at Crim_IRL. I hope you guys have a great day and a fantastic Shadowlands launch, and I'll see you in the next video coming from the Shadowlands.